Well, welcome back, Beans Army, to another episode of the Less is More Sports Podcast, the college offseason podcast, where you could say we're less of the regular season, but more of the offseason. As you all have probably noticed by now, my background is a little different than most shows, and as you probably could have guessed, it's for obvious reasons. It's Duke Carolina Part 2, and most importantly, it's the senior night for the Duke quote unquote seniors. Last time we'll be seeing Ryan Young, Jeremy Roach, and Spencer Hubbard playing at Cameron Indoor and in a Duke uniform. Um, we could potentially be seeing other players playing their last game at Cameron. You just never know in these modern day age of college basketball. But we have a list of topics that we got to get through today. And, there's not really a set theme, which is something different that we usually do here on the Less is More Sports podcast. We have a bunch of different topics that we're going to talk about, and they were all put together by yours truly, as in all three of us. Matt kind of gave me that look. He's like, Matt wanted to make sure I didn't take all the credit.
Watch.
I'm watching. Well, I'm watching with my Stevie Wonder shades on, but
Stevie. He's not blind. Let's get into that conspiracy. That's topic number one.
In all seriousness, the first topic we're going to talk about today is Arch Manning. Unless you live under a rock, we all know who that is. He has decided to opt out of the new college football video game. And Ryan, I'm going to start with you. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that he's the first player to opt out of about 10,000 players that have opted in. But it doesn't really surprise me with the Manning family. They've all been kind of old school, if you remember Arch Manning's commitment post, he didn't do none of that, the hat flipping, the hat choosing, none of the chaos that every recruit does now. He just simply put a committed post on his Instagram page and said committed to the University of Texas, and that's it. He kept it simple, and Eli and Peyton really wanted that to happen. So it doesn't. Sorry, it doesn't. Hold on, I'm thinking. It doesn't. I'm trying. Sorry, I'm trying to think of what to say.
You're good. You're good.
I just had this big smile because you said hat flipping, and I went the hat flipping slasher.
I thought it was the slash slinging slasher.
The trash ringing, the sash ring.
But it doesn't surprise me about the Manning family because they don't try to get in all the media. They don't try to get all the attention. And he said, this is what I've heard from other sources, but he said that he will be in the game when he's the guy. He's not gonna be in the game as a backup. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. Matt, what do you have to add?
I mean, after I went on that 5-minute rant about player rankings a minute ago, I really don't have a strong opinion on this. I mean, if you remember what Peyton Manning was like, we grew up as Colts fans less than I did. The dude was always looking for little pieces of motivation to be even better than he was. So if this is Arch Manning's way of giving himself a little nugget, a little bit more motivation to be the guy at Texas, so be it. Maybe that's just his way of getting himself motivated to be even better than he was or is. He's just trying to give himself a little carrot to dangle in front of the horse to make sure that he can go, to make sure he gets to the next level. And, he really doesn't need the money. Let's not kid ourselves about this. $600 in the video game would be nice, but, you're, like Brian said, you're part of the Manning family. They keep quiet, but they've probably got more money than I'll ever see in my entire lifetime in their garage, in their lockbox they keep in case there's an emergency. So, combination of if it makes you feel good, do it. Give yourself the extra motivation, and you don't really need the money. You're a Manning. You're a Manning. You're made of money. And like Ryan said, the family's low key. So, if that's what Arch wants to motivate himself, I'm not gonna tell him otherwise. I mean, people will probably want to play as Quinn Ewers anyway if he's a starter because, like we said, he's probably going to be a top 10-ish pick next year if he doesn't get hurt, God forbid. So, yeah, I've got no problem with it at all. I have really no strong thoughts on it either way.
I'm going to add a couple things before we move on to the next topic. Number one, if you are hiding money in your garage, that's not the smartest move in the world to do. I want to throw that out there. Number two, this is me personally. I would do it just for a free copy of the game because, as you all know, that game is going to be expensive as hell. So, me personally, I would opt in just to get a free copy of the game. But no, I think at the ultimate point that I'm going to make here is that we all can agree that this is a surprise to absolutely no one. If you're paying attention, if you know what's going on, this is a guy that isn't even cashing in on his NIL money until he is the starting quarterback. So, my big question, I guess, if his name wasn't Arch Manning, this wouldn't be a storyline at all because
Yeah.
if you're following anything at all, why are we surprised by this? And now I'm just waiting for the more conspiracy theories that he's going to end up transferring from Texas that we've been seeing all freaking offseason long that are just getting annoying and just incorrect at this point. But, hey, what do I know? I'm just a podcast host, right?
I can't wait for Indiana quarterback Arch Manning.
Hey, that would be the type of move that kind of really kicks off the Kurt Sanjetti era. Get the
That would be
swagger
absolutely
going.
bonkers.
We're talking about the college football game, but like they still haven't released the day that it's coming out. There was a rumor about it coming out a certain day in July, I think, and the NCAA was like, nope, we're not. That is not the day that we are releasing it. So hopefully soon that they are releasing it. I know they showed a trailer, and in May they're showing an even bigger trailer of what the game's gonna be like. But hopefully they release a date soon.
The suspense is building with this one, my friends. Anyways, time to move on to the next topic. And as you all have been following as well, this is the NFL Combine has been going on. And where this ties into our jurisdiction is that, as we've learned over the years, that NFL draft success often leads to recruiting success. So, with all that being said, what school do you think benefited the most from recruiting just based off the NFL Combine alone? Matt, I'll start with you on this one.
I mean, I'm going to be honest. I like the combine because people talk about Indianapolis a lot. That's really all I have to say about it. I mean, we always talk about how people did an impressive amount of work at the combine, but to me, it's always just you did a drill, you did it when you weren't touched. Congratulations. Here's a cookie. You looked really good in the tank top. You look cool wearing the QB1 sweater or whatever. And I really don't have an opinion on it. It's not a surprise that schools like Texas and Michigan and Florida State do well. I mean, they have the best facilities anyway. They've got good coaches. They're obviously in positions to win national championships most every year. So it's kind of like, wow, you're telling me Texas has good facilities that produce well-conditioned players? Oh my
No
god.
way. No
Who would
way,
have seen
dude.
that coming? So it's just to me an example of the rich get richer. I mean, I know we're all talking, and what Les is probably going to talk about because we all know it is Texas setting setting the 4-4 time records, the great performances the defensive tackles had, but Florida State had some good movements too, especially with Verse and Fisk. So I like them, but to me the combine is kind of like player rankings. It's cool, it's fun, you get to ball out and you get to look good, but at the end of the day, the draft in any sport, is mostly just praying to God that you pick the right player and your dart hits on the board. So I'm going to say to Florida State, but once again, combines are fun, but let's see what happens on Sunday.
Before I get to Ryan, I think Bean has officially wanted to chime in on his opinion.
Bean's head is disappearing. Where'd he go? Oh my God.
No, he just wanted to say hi. That
Oh,
was
hi,
it.
Bean.
That was very anticlimactic.
Bean's probably thinking Georgia.
Georgia or Washington. We got a Washington
Amarius
representative with Roma Dunze.
He's thinking about how good Amarius Mims looked in that shuttle drill. He's very excited.
No, apparently he didn't have much to say about it. He just wanted to say hi.
Maybe he's of the same mind as me.
Maybe he's turning over a new leaf. He's usually kind of evil on the show, but now he's being really nice and friendly. Maybe he's warming up to us before he kills us all one day.
A new Bean on life.
Bean has found Jesus.
Creature Bean.
Ryan, what do you have to add?
I kind of went with a big school, obviously Michigan, with the combine record of having 18 players attend the combine. You know, it was kind of hard to choose because there was so many players that did well. the combine is good for bringing out players that nobody has seen. You know, example number one, DK Metcalf. Some people saw him, especially Ole Miss fans, but nobody saw how ripped he was in college and how until he was at the combine. He probably benched over 225, probably over 20 times if he did the bench. But I went with Michigan. Also, like the LSU guys, Brian Thomas, Jaden Daniels, and Malik Neighbors, and thought they did really well. Also, obviously, I'm going to mention the Texas guys. They all did well. Tavondre Sweat. He was definitely looked like the biggest defensive lineman, and obviously, um, whatever his name was that broke the running 40
Xavier
record.
Worthy.
Yeah,
Xavier
yeah,
Worthy.
Xavier Worthy. Yeah, I watched him in college a lot. I knew he was a fast guy. I didn't know he was that fast until the 40 showed up. But all those schools really benefited from the combine, and Michigan will have a lot of players drafted, and so will Texas.
We all know what I'm going to say. Matt already said it. It was the combine turned into the Texas two-step. It was the Texas show. I mean, and before I get into everything that happened at the combine, I'm going to take a look back. You remember 3 years ago when everyone, literally except me, was freaking out about Texas not having a player drafted in the NFL draft? Well, that's like all a distant memory now. Yeah, Texas won the NFL Combine, in my opinion, and that's not even coming as a Texas fan, even though Matt's going to disagree with that statement. Obviously, it started with Xavier Worthy breaking the 40-yard dash record, but then you had JT Sanders, who looked like the best receiving tight end there. Of course, we all know what Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy did in the drills. They absolutely dropped jaws with their athletic ability and their size. And of course, then you get AD Mitchell starting to get Megatron comps with all of his measurables. For a team that's had a top 10 recruiting class each of the last 2 years, this is only going to attract more high profile recruits to come to Texas. And like Jay Witt said, this is how I'm going to end my statement. Point being, come to Texas. That's all I got to say about that. I was waiting for Matt to tell me I was wrong somehow, some way.
No, I mean, well, it's like I said. You're telling me Texas has facilities that produce well-conditioned players? I'm in shock. Nobody saw Texas being able to do that. What am I supposed to say? Just like
Well,
this next topic, this is going to require a little bit of nuance too, because I have an opinion, but I think Les is going to hate it. So let's go ahead and introduce that.
Well, then I guess I'll lead with you on this one. As for our next topic, the rich get richer. Jon Scheyer and the Duke Blue Devils land another 5-star recruit and 7-2 center. Come on. I cannot pronounce his last name to save my life at the moment, but 5-star center from the NBA Global Academy representing Team Africa. So with another recruit, and we could just look at the DJ Khaled GIF, the another one for this one. Is it time to officially acknowledge Jon Scheyer as the best recruiter in college basketball? And Matt, since you actually have an opinion on this, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I've got to be careful how I say this because I don't want you to jump down my throat immediately.
I'm
But
not going to jump down your throat no matter what you say.
well, I don't know. You might for this one.
No, I won't.
I think John. I wonder in cases like this if it's Jon Scheyer who's doing the recruiting, or if it's the brand. If you know what I'm saying. A while ago, you and I had a conversation back before Ryan was on or anything like that, where we talked about who we thought was going to be better off in the long run: Kyle Neptune at Villanova or Jon Scheyer at Duke. And I said Jon Scheyer simply because Duke is an established brand. I mean, I could be the head coach of Duke probably, and players would still flock to Duke because it's Duke. They put a lot of guys in the league, they put a lot of guys in the draft, they're in the conversation every year. I think Duke could probably be 0-25 and people would still talk about them and still commit to them. So it's like I don't want to dismiss Jon Scheyer at all, but I wonder for a guy so new, I mean, it's been what, 3 years I think since he's taken the reins there, maybe.
It'll be his third year next year.
Right. So he's still trying to establish himself in some ways, and I don't want to undersell what he's done because he's done a lot. But I think at this point, it's about a 50-50 shot between Jon Scheyer and the brand. Now, will that change? I think so. I think Jon Scheyer will will raise his own star as he continues to get momentum, as Duke continues to go, and hopefully the conferences don't envelop them whole. But I mean, I'd still think you got to look at a guy like John Calipari with what he's done, in terms of just being known for recruiting straight up. I know you don't want to hear it, but we talk about La Familia, we talk about all that stuff he does. I think Jon Scheyer is still in the process of establishing his own personal brand on recruiting. And he's off to a great start, but I think he's a little bit assisted by the brand he's got backing him right now, which is that Duke is good. They've been good. They've been good since the late 80s and had spurts of success before that. So, it's an established brand. Duke has the most Twitter followers of any fan base for a college basketball team. So, it's an established brand. It's got the backing. And like I said, I don't want to sell Shire short. I think he's good. I think he's a great X's and O's coach. But right now, 3 years ish in, I think right now he's trying to establish his own personal taste on an established brand. Does that make sense?
I'm just waiting for where I'm supposed to jump down your throat because I think everything you said is valid there.
Oh,
But Ryan, I'm going to get to before I get my obviously we all know I'm going to chime in on this, but before we do that, I'm going to get to Ryan first.
I agree with Matt. I think the brand is huge, but I still think that John Shire is a good, a really good recruiter. I think that everyone, when they think of Duke, I'm not sure if everyone thinks of John Shire yet. They still think of a little bit of Coach K, but I still think that he may be the top, like Duke and him may be the top of recruiting. Last year John Calipari had an elite recruiting class, but I still think it's Duke. Past 2 years they've been 1 and 2. This coming year they have Cooper Flag, Isaiah Evans, and then the 7-2 center who is maybe still growing, which is very scary for the rest of the ACC and the rest of Division 1 Power 5. But the year before, they had guys like Jared McCain, Sean Stewart, and the year before that, which that was the year that Coach K left. So I'm not sure if these guys committed to Coach K or John Shire, but it was the Kyle Filipowski squad. And I the benefit of the doubt is I think that he is the top of recruiting right now.
No, I definitely think there's both of you all made some very good points on both sides of the argument, and there's no doubt that the Duke brand definitely assists Jon Scheyer. Where I'm going to chime into this is that there is still something to be said for the fact that next year will be Jon Scheyer's third season as the Duke head coach, and he's had 2 number 1 classes. But the biggest takeaway that I have from this is that being a Duke fan for over 20 years, I've started to see kind of a trend over the last 10. And I'm going to start when Jeff Capel left as one of our assistants for Pittsburgh, and then a bunch of people started saying on the media or social media, whatever, Duke is going to take a hit losing their lead recruiter. Well, then Jon Scheyer stepped in as the lead recruiter as an assistant coach, and you can just peep the recruiting sites on the players that he's given credit for bringing to Duke. I mean, you have R.J. Barrett, you have Marvin Bagley, you have Cam Reddish. The list goes on and on. And then, of course, you fast forward to when he became the head coach at Duke, and everyone's saying, oh, well, Duke's going to take a hit. They're losing Coach K. Well, yes and no. Duke still looks like a pretty daggone good team the last 2 years to me. I mean, last year, who knows how far in the tournament they go if Mark Mitchell doesn't get hurt. They ended the season winning 10 of their last 11 games. I mean, they were the first Duke team since the 2014 team with Jabari Parker and Rodney Hood to finish the season undefeated at home. So, I mean, Jon Scheyer is doing great things at Duke, and there is a reason that he was groomed to be the Duke head coach under Mike Krzyzewski. And so I guess overall what I'm going to say is that both of you all are right. Part of it is Jon Scheyer is good at what he does, but it's also Duke is a brand at the end of the day. And no matter really who Duke has as the head coach, I mean, there's going to be a lot of people in your corner to make what you want to happen. So, I mean, again, it's a mix of both. Jon Scheyer, in my opinion, yes, is the best recruiter in college basketball, but he, at the same time, yes, is aided by the Duke brand. And I don't think that's really a hot take there at all. So that's all I have to say about that, unless anybody wants to chime in with some last-minute thoughts.
I'm good.
Fair enough. And I kind of like this because back-to-back topics I know Matt is going to have an opinion on. And now we're switching the gears from my favorite team to Matt's favorite college basketball team. And as Hoosier Hysteria has already known, Liam McNeeley decommitted from the Hoosiers this past week. Matt, I'm going to lead with you. Does this make Mike Woodson's hot seat that much more hotter?
Yes, it does. But I'm just going to start from the very beginning here, which is Mike Woodson was doomed from the start, man. Which is to say that he inherited a team right off the bat that you, me, and Ryan could have coached at least to the NCAA tournament. I mean, anytime you've got a player who was like as good as Trace Jackson Davis and get a bunch of complimentary guys around him, you're at least going to make the first weekend every year he's there, pretty much. So that's where it starts out. You can't see the cracks that are already developing in the system because a player like that covers them all. But you also have a tendency to sell the guy short in his first couple years because he was gifted a very talented roster. And where I think the seeds of discontent this year started is Indiana fans overestimating just how good this team was. 'Cause, I mean, you think about it, they got rid of Trace Jackson Davis, moves on, Miller Kopp moves on. You've got like 4 out of 5 starters already leaving the team for various reasons. You know, some for the draft, some transfer, some doing this and that. So you've already lost 4 out of 5 starters. You lose Tamar Bates and you lose Jordan Geronimo off the bench. And yeah, you replace them with Khalil Ware and you replace them with Anthony Walker, but you still didn't get any good guards in the portal. So you've got really dominant big men. You've got Malik Reneau. You've got Khalil Ware. You've got a pretty good front court, but you didn't do much to address the back court. So to be honest, people are talking about this Indiana season. I even saw you said they were one of the biggest disappointments of the year. And I think that's just because people overestimated. Because to me, they're right where I thought they'd be. If they flip one of the results with Kansas or UConn or Auburn, they're solidly on the bubble, which is where I thought they'd be pretty much. Because you didn't get enough guards. You've got really good big men. Unless Khalil Ware decides he's going to turn into Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, you're really not going to win a game. So I think that's where this whole thing starts. You got the seeds of discontent from a fan base who were for some reason thinking this was a second weekend team. And I thought they could make the NCAA tournament. I thought they would be on the bubble most of the year. I didn't think they were that good because their roster construction was a little too wonky. Then you throw in some injuries and you throw in some other stuff, and they're acting, and the IU fan base is acting like they're having a Louisville caliber season right now. Not that they have a chance to finish 18-13 tomorrow. They're acting like they're 6-24 and Mike Woodson is like the worst coach who ever lived. That being said, I don't think Mike Woodson's a good coach. I'm just going to flat out say it. He's 65 years old. He's got some issues with his offense, which is, I think, the reason why McNeeley decommitted mostly, is because the Indiana offense seems archaic. It seems like it's based on big men. And, you know, in the modern game, you don't want to do that, especially when you're a young player like he is, aspiring to be a lottery pick. You want to be in an offense where you can ball out. I don't appreciate the way he recruits either. I understand that Indiana wants to be at the table with the top guys, but Indiana has been down so long. You have to kind of earn your way back into that spot. You don't just show up and be like, "Hey, we're Indiana. We were good when your dad was 30. You know, come play for us." You got to kind of earn that back, and the way you earn that back is by getting guys and developing them. Now, that's another problem I see with the fan base too, is that they're a little bit too high on like, why are we recruiting the state? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? So I went back and looked at recruiting stuff, and Indiana got the 2 biggest in-state recruits in 2018. They got Trey Galloway, who's okay, and they got Anthony Leal, who's Mr. Basketball, who barely played most of his career. The 2 guys behind at the bottom of that state on that state ranking for players were Nigel Pack and John L. Davis. If those guys were on Indiana's roster as freshmen, Indiana fans would be wondering why they aren't going after bigger names. You can't predict who's going to burst out and ball out. You can't predict this. You can't predict that. You just can't. You can only try to get the best players in your state and hope they pan out. And like I said, Woodson was doomed from the start. He was given a really loaded roster with exponential potential, even if they barely lived up to it. So the first 2 years you could barely see cracks, but they were covered up by good players. And now you're seeing that kind of like weird style that he plays, whether it be the NBA style of like we're gonna rotate units in and out, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, and now it's showing up to be bad. And I really don't know. The seat's incredibly hot right now. But I think that everybody shares a little bit of blame here. Woodson, the fans, the administration, I think they all share blame. But instead of trying to figure out what's wrong, they're just going to blame each other again, the flame wars on Twitter. So if you ask me right now, today, will Mike Woodson be fired next year? I would say yes, because with zero recruits, you're going to have to look at the transfer portal. And if you look at teams that added 6 or more players in the transfer portal, which Indiana will probably have to do, because I wouldn't be surprised at all if Ware and Mbako decided they were going to go to the big leagues. If you look at teams that added 6 or more players this year in the transfer portal, none of them are going to the NCAA tournament. And with the fan base already as turned against and toxic as it is, I don't think that's a recipe for success. It's a recipe for intrigue, but it's not a recipe for success. So those are my thoughts. I feel like we should all share a little bit of the blame here, but at the end of the day, it's really hard to evaluate a guy who basically started off with such a good team. It's just incredibly hard.
Ryan, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I do. And Matt, did you say Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Cream Abdul-Jabbar? Are you
Well, that
talking about the guy from Indiana State who a very big man who's an absolute bucket? Indiana State
no,
is
I met Kareem, but I do love me some Robbie Avila. I do love me some Robbie Avila. If he ends
yeah.
up in Indiana, I will not apologize for the person I will become.
Yeah, I've
I'm here
seen
for it.
how he has that nickname given by someone. But to Indiana, I think that his seat is getting a lot hotter. Right now he's getting a lot of the attention, not in a good way. And I think that he will be fired soon. He's had a lot of bad things happen this season with Xavier Johnson's technical fouls every single game. Mackenzie and Baca wanting to get Taco Bell at 3 a.m., causing havoc. And it's just not been good from the start. You know, Trace Jackson Davis and some of the good players on that team were all Archie's guys. You know, Woodson coached them for a little bit. He's brought in some pretty good players, like some 5 stars, like Mackenzie and was a 5 star. Malik Renew is a 5 star. Hood Shifino was a 5 star. He was good. He obviously went to the league, and so did Trace. And so losing those guys sucked. But one name I heard in recruiting, but I haven't heard since he's been in Indiana was Ja'Kai Newton. He's sitting at the end of the bench. I don't know if he's injured.
He's injured. He has something
Okay.
wrong with his. He's been doing something with his ankle all year long, so
Yeah.
he hasn't even played in any of the games like against Northern Alabama.
Yeah, I haven't heard much from there, but and this is my last point, but from the 93.9 show and 680 Louisville, they said that they heard that multiple players went to the AD, the athletic director of Indiana, and said, "Get Mike Woodson out of here." And that is super interesting. And losing Liam McNeeley sucks too, because you know how many recruits they have coming in next year?
Well, they've got none. Yeah.
0. So I think that's tough, and I think that Indiana fans, just need a new coach.
I want to touch on something Ryan said, but before I get into that, I'm going to completely state the obvious here. Obviously, you lose a player like McNeeley, it's a big loss. I've watched a lot of Liam McNeeley over the years, and he's about as underrated as a 5-star as you could possibly get. Dude's an absolute bucket, in my opinion, the best shooter in next year's freshman class. But I do want to say though, too, even though that I don't think it's as big of a deal that Indiana is losing their only recruit of next season so far, because I mean we're in the transfer portal age. I mean you can just hit the portal. Yeah, you can hit the portal and then on a lot of ways get even more productive players year one than if you were to just hit the recruiting cycle. But where I think this is a problem, and it touches on what Ryan said about how a lot of players went to the AD and said that they want Mike Woodson out of here. The part of this story that is the most concerning is that Liam McNeeley decommitted right after Mike Woodson was given an extension. That it makes you wonder like what all is going on and what is like the climate of the Mike Woodson era in Indiana. So to me, that's the biggest red flag of this all is the timing of when he chose to decommit.
And the
And
thing
as
is, we won't
do what?
know it. And the thing is, we won't ever know what the climate was like until like it's over because whether we like it, whether I want to admit it, anybody wants to admit it. Mike Woodson's friends are on the board of trustees. He's got the Simon family. He's got Quinn Buckner. He's got a lot of people on the board of trustees. So I think this might be one of those things that's just unknown until we get there. Like I said, the guy just walked into a situation where he was damned if he did and damned if he didn't.
Right. And how I'm going to finish up my point here is obviously being the recruiting expert on the show is that this now opens up the next question of where is Liam McNeeley going to go? And it's between everybody's going to say it's Kansas because that was the team that finished in second place during his initial recruitment. But my thing is don't sleep on Maryland because if you remember during Derek Queen's recruitment, Liam McNeeley was recruiting him hard to go to Indiana. And now when Derek Queen decided to go to Maryland, Queen also came out and said here recently that another 5-star recruit is going to join him at Maryland. So that begs the question, with the recent decommitment, is it going to be McNeeley? Not to mention, if you follow like their social media pages, Queen and McNeeley are pretty close. So even though it looks like Kansas is the front runner to land McNeeley, don't sleep on the Terrapins here. Even though I absolutely hate their fan base, don't sleep on them.
Well, I feel better about that if they didn't actually get swept by this Indiana team too.
I'm gonna tell you that don't mean he'll
Kevin
be
Willard, I don't know. He better be praying for that because he's on the hot seat too. I think.
maybe. Only time will tell. And we got about 3 minutes left, and that brings us to the last question I want to talk to you all about because we got an absolute bombshell dropped a couple days ago. And now there will be a first ever in-season college basketball tournament held in Las Vegas that will offer NIL deals to participating teams and a $2 million prize for the winning team. Overall, thoughts on this? Ryan, I'll start with you.
I just think that it is crazy. Just the whole time of not having NIL and then a couple years ago now having NIL. It reminds me a little bit. I don't know if you all know this. You definitely know this. The basketball tournament.
I've
Like,
covered it, yeah.
Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that tournament. But it reminds me a little bit of that you win the tournament, you get money. But this just seems crazy for college basketball, like college basketball athletes. I'm not against it at all. I think it'll be really really cool, and to have it in Vegas is just the perfect place. But I think it could be huge in NIL. Part of NIL, but it is a little crazy.
Matt, you look like you really wanted to say something.
Oh, I just burped. But yeah, I mean, it's a great idea. I thought I thought the NBA in season tournament was like a dumb idea. I'm not gonna lie, I'm still not sold on that. But doing this with college kids now that you can do it legally, I think that's a great idea. I think it gives people more of an incentive to ball out, and the fact you're paying them regardless if they win or if they lose is, the winner gets a little bit more money, obviously, but giving them all each team $1 million if they win, if they participate, that's really good in and of itself. Not only does it help the kids, it helps the programs too. And if someone's willing to give away money, far be it for me to tell them no. And the best part is they're thinking about playing it in the sphere. Just imagine, just playing basketball in that sphere and it turns into a giant smiley face or SpongeBob or something. I think it's great. That's even better than the NIL. Just imagine the exterior shots we're going to get.
The the distractions during the free throws could be lethal.
Ooh, that would be
Insane.
delightfully devilish.
We got less than a minute left, so as always, like and subscribe to Less is More Sports YouTube and Spotify channel. Be sure to follow the social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Threads. That's at Less is More Sports. And until next time, we got a list of topics that are going to be very entertaining for the viewers coming soon. Mid-major Matt strikes again with some coaching moves, and we might even talk a little bit about our favorite time of year, March Madness. But of course, until next time, I'm going to watch Duke get a win over North Carolina in the another chapter of the Tobacco Road rivalry. Of course, if you didn't know, Austin Rivers' shot over Tyler Zeller was my background today. So you already know. You already know what's up.
He wasn't as good as Cody anyway.
Well, no shit, Sherlock.
Still winning.
I don't know